In this Tech Talk, I'm speaking with Scott Houtz, President of Air Management Technologies, and we will be discussing the importance of effectively managing air in a baking facility. Hi, Scott. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, Jerry.
Scott, I'm really excited to talk to you about this because I know there's a lot of science behind air management, and some of the things that it affects are people safety and food safety. So that's kind of the first question that I want to address. Can you talk about how effective air management can impact facility air quality in relation to the people in the bakery and food safety and food quality?
Certainly. Back probably 20 years ago, the main emphasis in baking was more or less providing ventilation just to keep people comfortable, essentially just from getting too hot. Over the years, it certainly has evolved into more of an emphasis on managing heat stress, which would be the occupant side of the safety, and then of course food safety as far as making sure that we're controlling the air quality within a facility to manage that you don't have particulates, molds, insects, and so forth entering the facility. So it's really changed over the past 20 years. And I would say even in the past 5 years, there have been tremendous changes.
Yeah, when I walk into a bakery, the temperature is what you notice right away. And I have noticed that a lot of bakeries lately, the air quality is just a lot more comfortable. Do you think that has to do with recruitment and retention and just keeping those workers comfortable?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, for years, and there's actually a heat stress requirement that OSHA has. And everybody was kind of using that as the gauge that if you keep below that heat stress, that is sufficient. However, like you just indicated, Joni, employee retention has become a big thing. So when they can provide a better environment for the employees, it becomes more productive from their aspect, as well as having aspects of food safety. Obviously, you can get a double bang.
Right. So then that's the other thing that I don't typically think about with air management is the food safety aspect. So can you talk to me a little bit about how proper air management can prevent airborne particulates, mold, and even an element of pest control?
So one of the things that people don't many times realize is that the air outdoors is many times at a much higher concentration than the air indoors as far as molds and so forth. So if you don't have the proper filtration on your air handling systems that's drawing air into the facility, essentially these molds and airborne particulates can actually infiltrate into there. And then obviously they can end up depositing on production equipment, on the product itself. And when you have the right conditions, that facilitates mold growth. So by keeping proper filtration of the incoming air, and then obviously in bakeries, there's a lot of exhaust air that's going out due to the process. When you have that air that's going out, if air goes out, it will come in. So if you're not keeping the building under a positive pressure, that air will typically come in through the loading dock areas or any place where there's any type of openings. And then obviously it's coming in completely unfiltered and unchecked. And that's the worst case scenario.
So your company indicates that there are 4 pillars in getting a facility's air quality under control. Can you walk me through what those 4 pillars are?
Yeah, the first of the pillars is essentially to have a way of measuring the air quality, because if you can't measure the variable, how can you say that you're actually improving upon that variable or have it in control? So the first thing would be monitoring is one of the first pillars, to be able to monitor and measure that environmental performance indicator, as we refer to it as. The second is in existing facilities is having a proper analysis done to determine where the airflow that you currently have in the facility is capable of supporting your objectives. And what those objectives are, of course, to improve food safety and occupant safety as well. And then after that analysis is done, we can determine, what existing equipment might be able to fit the needs of the plan, which essentially is the third pillar, which is the solution. So the solution then becomes how you combine existing equipment, new equipment, control strategies, and the proper air management technologies to make sure that we can provide the solution that's going to improve that environmental performance within inside the facility. And then the fourth one is, it kind of ties back into the measurement and verification, if you think about almost as closing a circle, is the fact of being able to measure those variables to see once what for benefits have been achieved. And then obviously to do the maintenance. We see many times people will go ahead and they'll try to do all the right things, but they end up, failing because they do not have the measurement in place to be able to determine whether that solution's been maintained over the long haul. We actually developed a system, we call it the EPI Vision, and it actually measures those environmental performance indicators and gives feedback so that you'll get that feedback and say, hey, things just aren't quite right here. Action needs to be taken.
It impacts the operation, but the operation also impacts the air management. Mm-hmm. So are there any specific things that once they get good air management in place, what a bakery operation needs to do to keep that maintenance going?
What we normally do is we kind of provide the oversight of that maintenance because it has a lot more to do with our oversight with maintaining the food safety, which a lot of HVAC contractors, they get it, but they probably don't get the fact of how the proper air management affects the food safety or even the occupant heat stress within a facility. So by having the EPI Vision and by having oversight on our behalf to be able to look at, those environmental performance indicators, we can then help to facilitate the local maintenance staff or whatever. Many times that's a significant investment. And if you make it and it's not being maintained afterwards, it's such a shame that they invested all that.
Right. And then that's going to impact the ROI, right?
Absolutely. And when you speak of like ROI, one of the things that, can't be discounted is the impact that the ventilation systems do have on the energy performance of the buildings. So we talked about like occupant heat stress and food safety, but it also impacts oven operation. It impacts freezer operation. All these aspects are impacted by air management. And if you have air moving through different zones, like for example, if there might be a freezer or whatever, you will cause, to load up with frost much quicker. Higher humidities can cause dripping, which we all know that water and condensate is a bad thing when we're talking about food safety, and even oven performance. Many times we get called in for air management solutions because ovens aren't performing properly. If you don't have the proper pressurization, the oven will not effectively operate.
It's really incredible to think about how many areas proper air management impacts. So I guess my last question would be, if a baker is interested in learning more, how can they get in touch with air management technologies to take that first step in improving their air management?
Yeah, they can get in contact with me direct. It'd be scott.houtz, Houtz, at airmanagement.com. And we do have, some information, obviously, that we'd be happy to share, to help them to get control over the air management within their facility.
Great. Well, Scott, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me about this important topic.
Well, thank you, Joni. Appreciate the opportunity.